Hello everyone and welcome. I'm excited to have you here today. Our presentation is titled Migration, Types, Causes, and Consequences. We'll be exploring the different kinds of migration, what drives people to move, and the impacts these movements have on societies. So let's dive in and discover more about this important topic together. Let's now move on to our home assignment, which focuses on the social causes of migration. We'll explore how various social factors influence people's movement from one place to another. Next, we'll look at the two main bases used for counting migration in the census of India, which helps us understand the scope and patterns of migration across the country. We'll also engage in an activity to better grasp these concepts. Moving forward, we'll examine the political causes of migration, such as conflicts, policies, and governance issues, that often drive people to move. Then, we'll analyze trends in migration over time, identifying patterns and shifts in migration behavior. We'll discuss the consequences of migration, both positive and negative, on individuals and societies. After that, we'll consider the economic causes, like job opportunities and income prospects, that motivate people to migrate. We'll look at the various streams of migration, which refer to the different directions or routes people take. Then, we'll categorize migration into different types, such as permanent, temporary, rural to urban, and urban to rural. We'll also explore spatial variation in migration, meaning how migration patterns differ across regions. Finally, we'll emphasize that migration is a global phenomenon, affecting countries and continents worldwide. This comprehensive overview ties together the many factors and patterns that shape migration, which is a key aspect of understanding population dynamics and societal change. In 2005, there were about 191 million people living outside the country where they were born. That's a huge number, and it really highlights how migration has become a significant part of our world. Over the years, especially since World War II, the number of international migrants has actually doubled. That shows how migration is not just a temporary trend, but a consistent, ongoing phenomenon. If we imagine all these migrants living in one place, they would make up the fifth most populous country in the world. This really puts into perspective how widespread and impactful migration is on a global scale. It ties into the overall theme of this presentation, showing how migration shapes societies, economies, and cultures worldwide. Now, let's take a closer look at the different types of migration. First, we have international migration, which involves changing residence across national borders. An international migrant is simply someone who moves from one country to another. This can happen for various reasons, like seeking better opportunities or escaping difficult situations. Within this category, we also distinguish internal migration, which is movement within the same country, say, moving from one state or city to another. Understanding these distinctions helps us see the different ways people relocate and the reasons behind their movements, which ties into the broader theme of global mobility and human migration patterns. Let's take a look at some of the key trends in migration. First, we see that professionals such as doctors, engineers, software engineers, management consultants, and financial experts have migrated to countries like the USA, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Germany. These individuals are typically highly educated and among the highest paid, highlighting the movement of skilled talent across borders. Next, we observe the reasons for migration from people's last residence. In recent times, the duration of residence, meaning how long people stay at their current location, has become an important factor. Moving further back in history, during the colonial period, a significant number of Indian laborers from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar were sent abroad by the British. They worked as plantation workers in places like Mauritius, the Caribbean islands, Fiji, and South Africa. This was a major chapter in the migration story driven by colonial economic needs. Additionally, semi-skilled Indians, such as artisans, traders, and factory workers, migrated to neighboring countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Brunei, and some African nations. These migrations were often driven by the search for better economic opportunities. Finally, when we look at the data collected by the Indian census, it records information such as the place of birth, whether someone is from a village or a town, and the place of last residence. This helps us understand migration patterns over time, including the movement of millions of Indian laborers during the colonial period. All these points together paint a comprehensive picture of how migration has evolved, influenced by economic, colonial, and skill-based factors, contributing significantly to India's demographic and economic landscape. Let's take a closer look at some key points regarding migration in the Indian census. When we talk about the place of residence, it's important to note that if a person's last residence is different from where they are currently enumerated, that place is recorded. Interestingly, this accounts for about 31% of the total population, highlighting the significant movement within the country. Next, we consider migrants by their place of last residence. This helps us understand migration patterns more clearly, especially when people move from one region to another. Then we look at the place of birth. Again, if it's different from where the person is now enumerated, we record that as well. About 30% of the population falls into this category, indicating a high level of internal migration based on birthplaces. Finally, there's the concept of lifetime migration, which captures individuals who have moved at least once in their lives. All of these data points are part of the two main bases of enumeration in the Census of India. These bases help us systematically understand migration patterns and their implications on the population distribution. Recognizing these different bases allows us to analyze migration more comprehensively and connect it to broader themes like development, urbanization, and demographic change. Let's take a closer look at the spatial variation in migration across different states. Intrastate migrants are most prominent in Greater Mumbai, highlighting its role as a major urban hub attracting people from within the state. On the other hand, when we look at out-migrants, states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar top the list, sending the highest numbers of people to other regions. Among urban agglomerations, Greater Mumbai again stands out as the primary recipient of in-migrants, reinforcing its significance as a migration destination. Additionally, states such as Maharashtra, Delhi, Gujarat, and Haryana have the largest net in migrants, meaning they attract more people from other states than they send out. This variation shows us how migration patterns are highly dependent on regional opportunities and economic factors. Overall, this spatial variation underscores the dynamic nature of migration within the country, shaped by economic prospects, employment opportunities, and urban growth. So, when faced with the question of migrating or staying, it all comes down to the decisions we make based on various factors. On one hand, there are reasons why a city might seem really attractive to us. These are often called pull factors, and they include things like better job opportunities, improved living standards, or access to more services and amenities. Essentially, what draws people toward the city. On the other hand, there are reasons why someone might want to leave their home region. These are known as push factors, and they could be things like unemployment, lack of resources, or environmental issues. These push factors make staying less appealing and can push people to consider migrating elsewhere. Understanding these reasons, both the pull factors that attract us to a new place and the push factors that motivate us to leave, is crucial in grasping the complex decision-making process behind migration. It ties into the broader theme of how and why people move from one place to another, shaping communities and influencing regional development. Let's take a look at the various causes of migration. First, there's forced migration, which happens when people move against their will, sometimes due to political conflicts or agreements. Then, we see migration driven by environmental factors, like escaping droughts or poor climate conditions that threaten their livelihoods. We also have migration as a result of enslavement, where individuals are forced to move under coercion. Overpopulation can be another driver, leading people to leave crowded areas in search of better living conditions. War, invasion, or military takeovers are powerful push factors. Examples include exiles from Cuba during Castro's regime, Tamils fleeing Sri Lanka's civil war, or Tibetans seeking refuge in India after Chinese control. Migration can also be a form of punishment for crimes, forcing people to relocate involuntarily. Moving to urban areas is another significant trend. People often migrate to cities because rural areas lack economic opportunities, leading to urbanization. Natural disasters, such as earthquakes or floods, also cause many to migrate. Remember the tent cities in Turkey after the 1999 earthquake. Lastly, many are driven by economic reasons, seeking better job prospects and improved living standards. All these factors are interconnected and highlight how diverse the reasons for migration can be. But at their core, they all reflect the human desire to improve life conditions or escape adverse situations. Migration can be driven by a variety of social reasons that are deeply personal and meaningful. One major factor is the desire to find personal freedom or to live a certain lifestyle. People often migrate because they seek environments where they can express themselves freely or pursue their aspirations without restrictions. Another common reason is to reunite with family, friends, or loved ones who have already migrated. The emotional pull of being close to family members or reconnecting with community can be a powerful motivation for migration. Furthermore, migration can be motivated by the desire to spread a political philosophy. For example, individuals might move to promote ideas like democracy or Marxism, aiming to influence or support political change in new regions. Similarly, many migrate to spread their religion, seeking to share their faith and beliefs with others, or to establish religious communities. All of these reasons highlight how social factors, whether personal, familial, political, or religious, play a crucial role in why people decide to migrate. They connect to the broader theme of migration as a complex social phenomenon driven by a variety of human needs and aspirations. Let's take a closer look at the streams of internal migration. First, we see that females tend to prefer short-distance rural-to-rural migration. This often happens within the same area, where they move locally, perhaps for family or community reasons. On the other hand, males are more likely to migrate over longer distances, especially from rural areas to urban centers, driven by economic opportunities. When we compare intrastate and interstate migration, meaning movement within the same state, is dominated by females. They tend to stay closer to home, often because of social or familial factors. Conversely, interstate migration, which involves moving across state borders, is mainly driven by males seeking better job prospects or economic advancement. Looking at the types of migration, we see four main streams. First, rural to rural, which involves movement within rural areas. Then, rural to urban, where people move from countryside to the city, often for employment or education. Urban to urban migration also occurs, typically for better living conditions or jobs within cities. Lastly, urban to rural migration, though less common, involves moving back to rural areas, sometimes for retirement or lifestyle reasons. A key point to remember is that intrastate migration generally outnumbers interstate migration. People prefer to move within their own state, likely because it's easier logistically and socially more comfortable. Regarding the reasons behind migration, female migrants are mostly driven by marriage, which explains their preference for shorter local moves. Males, however, tend to migrate for economic reasons, seeking better employment or income opportunities elsewhere. To sum up, these different streams of migration highlight how gender, distance, and motivation influence migration patterns. Understanding these dynamics helps us grasp the broader picture of internal mobility and its impact on regional development. Now, let's look at how underdevelopment can actually get worse due to the outmigration of skilled people. When talented individuals leave their regions, it creates a sort of vicious cycle, making development even more difficult. This is especially visible in states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Delhi, where we've seen the growth of slums largely because of unregulated migration. This unplanned movement of people into metropolitan cities leads to overcrowding, putting immense pressure on infrastructure, resources, and services. It's important to understand that migration isn't just about movement. It has significant impacts on both the origin and destination areas. For example, when people migrate from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar to rural areas of Punjab and Haryana, it might seem counterintuitive at first, but it actually contributed to the success of the Green Revolution in those regions. This migration helped supply labor and boost agricultural productivity, which was crucial during that period. Now, moving to the other side of the coin, remittances from Indian migrants living abroad or in other countries play a vital role in India's economy. States like Punjab, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu receive substantial amounts of money from their international migrants. This money sent back home, or remittances, is more than just support for families. It significantly helps regional economic growth. People use this money for various important needs, paying off debts, medical expenses, marriages, children's education, buying agricultural inputs, building or renovating houses, and more. So, while migration can pose challenges, it also brings positive economic benefits, especially through these remittances. It's a complex picture, but understanding both sides helps us see how migration shapes development, both positively and negatively. Rural-urban migration is a significant factor that contributes to the growth of city populations. When people move from rural areas to urban centers, it often leads to a shortage of skilled individuals in the countryside because most of the skilled and semi-skilled workers tend to migrate towards cities. This movement helps in balancing the distribution of people according to the available resources, although it can also cause some imbalances. One such imbalance is seen in the sex composition of populations. Due to selective migration, where either males or females are more likely to migrate, large cities often have an unfavorable sex ratio compared to rural areas. Typically, we see a higher influx of males into urban areas, which skews the gender balance. Now, talking about the consequences of migration, it leads to a redistribution of the population within the country. This can have various impacts, some negative, some positive. On the negative side, it can cause overcrowding in cities and depopulation in rural areas. On the positive side, it can stimulate economic growth and development by concentrating human resources where they are most needed. Overall, understanding these demographic changes helps us see how migration shapes the population landscape and influences resource allocation and social dynamics across regions. Migration tends to affect women more than men, especially in rural areas. When men migrate out, their wives are often left behind, which puts a lot of physical and mental pressure on them. This situation can make women more vulnerable to various challenges. At the same time, the mindset of people starts to shift. They begin thinking more broadly, and their narrow views start to change. This change in perspective can be positive, opening up new ways of understanding the world around them. However, sometimes these continued feelings of dejection can lead individuals to engage in antisocial activities like crime or drug abuse. It's a way some people cope with their sense of loss or loneliness. Migration also promotes the mixing of different cultures, leading to the development of a more composite, or blended, culture. This cultural exchange enriches societies, but also introduces new dynamics. On the social side, anonymity that comes with migration can create a social vacuum, a sense of isolation or emptiness among individuals. When people are anonymous in a new environment, they might feel disconnected or dejected. Now, looking at the consequences, there are some negative ones. Migrants often act as agents of social change, spreading new ideas related to technology, family planning, girls, education, and more from urban to rural areas. This can be a positive driver of progress. But there are also positive social consequences. Migration facilitates the spread of innovative ideas and practices, ultimately contributing to social development and cultural evolution. Let's take a closer look at some of the environmental consequences of rapid urbanization. Overexploitation of natural resources is a major issue that cities face today. This can lead to serious problems like groundwater depletion, where underground water sources are drained faster than they can be replenished. It also results in increased air pollution, which affects public health and the environment. Additionally, waste disposal becomes a significant challenge as urban populations grow, overwhelming existing systems. All of these issues contribute to unplanned growth of urban settlements. When cities expand without proper planning, we often see the emergence of slums and shanty colonies, which lack adequate infrastructure and services. And at the core of this is overcrowding caused by rural-urban migration. As people move into cities in search of better opportunities, the pressure on social and physical infrastructure, like transportation, sanitation, and housing, becomes intense. So, in essence, the overexploitation of resources and rapid population growth are interconnected problems that lead to environmental degradation and urban challenges. Recognizing these links is crucial as we think about sustainable urban development. So, let's explore why male migration tends to be higher from rural to urban areas. Generally, it's because men often move in search of better employment opportunities, higher wages, and improved living conditions in cities. Urban areas usually offer more jobs in industries, services, and construction, which attracts male migrants looking for work. Additionally, social factors like the traditional roles men play and their greater mobility also contribute to this trend. Now, moving on to the other point, why do we see higher numbers of females migrating from rural to rural areas in both diagrams? This often reflects family and social reasons, such as marriage or joining relatives in nearby villages. These movements are usually less about economic opportunities and more about maintaining social ties or fulfilling familial responsibilities. When we examine intrastate and interstate migration in India based on the census of 2001, we notice some interesting patterns. Intrastate migration, that is, movement within the same state, tends to be quite common, especially in large states with diverse regions, because people are often seeking better local opportunities or reuniting with family. Interstate migration, on the other hand, is driven more by economic factors, such as jobs in urban centers or industrial hubs. Overall, these migration patterns highlight the complex interplay of economic, social, and cultural factors shaping movement within and between states. Understanding these trends helps us grasp how populations are shifting and how development policies can be tailored to address these dynamics effectively. Let's explore some important questions about migration today. First, what is the percentage of females migrating in search of work or employment? Understanding this helps us see how women are participating in migration patterns driven by economic opportunities. Next, we should consider the main reason for female migration. Often it's employment, but there can be other factors like family reunification or education. Moving on, what about males? What percentage of male migration is also for work or employment? Usually, males migrate mainly for jobs, but analyzing the exact figures gives us a clearer picture. Now, let's look at the story of Subbulakshmi and Manish Gawarkar. By comparing their cases, we can better understand the different types of migration, whether it's rural to urban, for better livelihood, or other reasons, and see how their causes of migration influence their living conditions. Next, we want to identify the pull factors that attracted Mohan Singh to migrate, things like better employment, education, or healthcare. Similarly, we need to look at the push and pull factors for Arif, what pushed him from his original location, and what pulled him to the new one. Recognizing these factors helps us understand the complex motivations behind migration and how they shape individual choices and community development. Let's take a closer look at some key points about urban agglomerations and migration patterns in India. First, among the urban areas, Chennai UA has a significant share of in-migrant population. But if we compare all, Mumbai UA tends to attract the highest number of in-migrants. Moving on to migration streams, the one that dominates with male migrants is the rural-urban stream, especially from states like Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh is a major source state, because many men migrate to cities for better opportunities. Now, regarding the destinations, the state that receives the maximum number of immigrants is Maharashtra, largely due to Mumbai being a major economic hub. When we look at reasons for migration, work and employment are the primary drivers, especially for male migrants seeking jobs in urban centers. Marriage also plays a role, but it's generally less dominant compared to employment opportunities. Connecting this to the overall theme, migration patterns are shaped by economic opportunities, employment prospects, and social factors like marriage. Understanding these flows helps us grasp how India's urban landscape continues to evolve and how different states and streams contribute to this dynamic process. Let's wrap up with a quick overview of the key concepts. First, the pull and push factors of migration in India. Pull factors are the attractions that draw people to certain areas, such as better job opportunities, education, or healthcare. Push factors, on the other hand, are reasons that compel people to leave their current location, like poverty, lack of employment, or environmental issues. Understanding these helps us see why migration happens and how it shapes our society. Next, we need to differentiate between intrastate and interstate migration. Intrastate migration occurs within the same state, often for reasons like employment or education, while interstate migration involves moving from one state to another. The patterns, causes, and impacts of these two types of migration can vary significantly, influencing regional development differently. Moving on to the economic consequences of migration in India. Migration can lead to economic growth by providing labor for industries and services. It can also help balance regional disparities by redistributing the workforce. However, it may also strain urban infrastructure and lead to challenges like unemployment or overcrowding if not managed properly. Now, let's consider the spatial variation in migration across India. Migration patterns are not uniform. Some regions experience high influxes of people, often urban centers, while others see more outmigration. These variations are influenced by factors like economic opportunities, environmental conditions, and social networks, shaping the demographic landscape of our country. Finally, regarding the census of India, migration is typically enumerated based on two main approaches: place of last residence and place of enumeration. These bases help us understand migration flows and patterns more accurately, providing crucial data for planning and policy making. That concludes our discussion on migration. Remember, these concepts are interconnected and vital for understanding the demographic and economic dynamics of India.